Nightingale is here. For those who don't know, Nightingale is a PvE survival crafting game for 1 to 6 players. It was released this week as an early access title. I'm really excited to see what this game evolves into, but there are 5 major issues it needs to overcome first. Luckily, I think most of them are relatively simple fixes. I'm Dreadlock Ninja and I want to share with you what I like and dislike about the game, as well as what I think it needs in order to become a top tier gaming experience. If you're on the fence about buying this game, sit tight because I made this video to help you with your decision. As I mentioned, it has released into early access, and developers Inflection Games say they plan for a full release 9 months to a year later. At the moment, there is no official roadmap. I will of course do an update as things progress. Personally, I think it's going to take a bit longer than a year, but we'll see how it pans out. Fans of the survival crafting genre are used to early access titles, so I don't think that in and of itself is a deal breaker. However, one thing I'm sure many of you won't like is the fact that it currently always requires an internet connection, even if you're playing solo. I've not had any major server issues myself, but looking over the Steam reviews, there's a decent chunk of the negative reviews just involving various server issues. Whilst making this video, an announcement has been made in the Discord stating they have heard this feedback loud and clear and they're going to start work on implementing an offline mode. The overall reviews on Steam are mixed. When I started writing this, it was 55% positive and it has since crawled up to 58%, I think nearly 59 now. I have had a few bugs, some that required a relog to solve, some more frustrating ones I want to talk about. But before I go over all the issues, I want to tell you what I like about the game. I think visually it looks great. I'm playing on a 4070 Ti Super with an i7-9700K and 64 gigs of RAM. Got everything cranked up to the maximum, and some of these environments, they're incredible, especially the night skies. They really have utilized some of the lighting effect that Unreal Engine 5 has to offer. Looking into the woodland, it feels alive. Leaves are falling, birds and insects are flying around, there's lichen and moss growing. Yeah, I'm impressed. Some of the animations are a bit janky. I'm not sure if that's due to it being early access or if it's server issues. I have seen people even with 4090s having issues with shaders. I've only had minor issues with it. They did release a hot fix on day 2 to deal with this. I'm not sure if the videos I saw were from before or after. Sometimes I do get a bit of weirdness with shaders in the distance, but I do really have to look for it. I really like the art style of the game, and the Victorian aesthetic is pretty dope. One thing I wasn't too sure on from the trailers is the facial designs. The eyes are a bit weird and the rest of the face is kind of like looking in the mirror on psychedelics. The character creation screen has a lot of options. It seems very in-depth in some places whilst very shallow in others. For example, you can choose a family tree and then you can use that to have an effect on your appearance. You can even choose up to 3 colours for your iris and control the pupil size and redness. However, I definitely think it needs more things like hairstyles. For starters, there's no dreadlocks, but this troll has dreadlocks. That's just rude if you ask me. There are a few coming soon sections like scars and tattoos, so we will have to see how this plays out. I definitely think this is a good skeleton for them to build on, and I expect this is going to really fill out as the game grows. The premise of the game is solid in my opinion. Set in 1889 in an alternate timeline where humans have been gifted with magic and the ability to traverse the Fey realms. You play as a realm walker, or at least someone masquerading as one, stranded after the portal network collapsed. Personally, I think the Fey collapsed the portals on purpose to stop Ruben over here from deforesting any more realms. This guy has a serious vendetta for trees. Regardless of how the network actually collapsed, it is up to you to craft realm cards using rare materials in order to activate the portals and find a way back to the city of Nightingale. Essentially, you start off being able to craft a few of the basic, major, minor and biome cards, and this is going to dictate how the realms are procedurally generated. As you journey through the Feywild, you'll be able to collect resources unique to each biome, allowing progression onto the more challenging realms. The gameplay loop is enjoyable from what I've played so far. I think a good way to describe it would be a looter shooter survival crafting game. When you first get to a new realm, your map will be completely empty and you need to visit a Fey tower and fight your way to the top of it to unlock all the waypoints. These include puzzles, helping NPCs with buildings or supplying them with resources, defending points of interest and clearing out bastions and dungeons. The combat feels really good in terms of responsiveness, the melee weapons are well weighted and animation are clean. There is a very good variety of enemies and I think they look really cool, especially these guys. What lets the combat down though is the lack of mechanics. Most of the enemies just run directly at you like zombies or just leap at you. It doesn't matter how good just swinging a pickaxe into an enemy's head feels or how varied those enemies look. If every enemy just beeline straight towards you and there's no mechanics involved in the fight, it's going to get very boring very quickly. Puck on the other hand is the antithesis of boring. You first meet him during the tutorial and he'll periodically appear to aid you on your journey. I really like Puck. I think he's well written and he adds a level of mystique to the game.
Take these bloodstained cards, play them, and let amiable bond be drawn between Fae and Fleshling.
Voice acted by Mark Warren, who's done an incredible job in my opinion. Puck is currently the only voice acted NPC I've come across in the game, and I really hope they are planning on getting all of the other NPC lines voice acted. The tutorial took me about an hour to complete, which included some exploration and combat outside of what was required. I had fun doing it, but I'm not sure it'll be fun a second or third time around. I was completely fresh to the game and I can see it being tedious for anyone that played any of the pre-early access builds. Once you've been through a few portals and completed the various tasks set by Puck, he gives you an abeyance card, and this is where you can build your main estate. Nightingale uses blueprints to create structures. Something I really like is that you're able to place out your entire building before spending a single resource. However, you are really restricted on what kind of angles your building can face because rotation is locked to 22.5 degree increments. That might not be an issue for some of you, but for those like myself that will take the time to align their building just right, it's really frustrating and it feels restrictive. There is an interesting mechanic to do with buildings. Certain structures like crafting benches get traits if they're in proximities to light or heat. I'm all for this as I'm already the kind of person that will try to build my crafting areas in the most optimized and efficient ways possible, but I can see why some people won't like this feature. Crafting is also a very in-depth system. There are different types and tiers of each resource. Each provide their own traits that will have an effect on whatever it is that you're crafting. There are no player stats or skill trees in the game. All of your stats are derived from the gear that you're using. Some of the more casual players may think this is an overcomplicated system, but I don't think complexity is the main issue here. Yeah, there are a few tweaks I think that are needed, which I'll go over at the end with all my other improvement ideas. However, I think the main issue with the crafting system is actually the UI. Because of all the different types and tiers of materials, you need really good inventory management, and the UI is not streamlined in the slightest. There's no search bar, and similar items with different stats look the same and they can't be mixed. I assume this is to do with the way the stats go into gear. There are a lot of features we've come to expect in a game like this that just aren't there. I think my biggest issue with this game so far is the UI. I've only found the button to split stacks by accident, and you can only do that when transferring items. As far as I can tell, there's no way to just split a stack in your inventory. The hotbar is also really clunky. On one side is your weapons, and on the other side is food and offhand items like your umbrella or torch. You can't just press a key on your hotbar to eat some food. You have to press a key to highlight it and then another key to actually eat it. And if you've got a two-handed weapon equipped and your food is already highlighted on the other bar, you still need to press the key to eat it twice. Once to swap bars and then again to actually eat it. I think most people will tolerate bugs that come with playing an early access game. However, having a UI that feels like it is actively working against you is going to be the bane of hardcore players and possibly a deal breaker for the more casual players. Also, finding some of the tiered resources can be a hell of a grind. I'm not sure if they meant it to be like this because this seems over the top. I had to find some tier 1 swamp fiber for a quest, and it took multiple hours of exploring the swamp before I came across any at all. When I did, there were 3 plants and I got 8 from it. It's one thing to have resources locked to certain rounds, but they need to be reasonably easy to find once you get there. I have experienced some minor bugs, such as every item on my hotbar showing as spades. I've had this a few times and it required a relog to fix. Sometimes trees won't fall properly or they fall through the mesh. When they do fall through the mesh, unless there's something else on the floor you can use to pick up, all those logs are lost. A more frustrating issue I've had was one of the NPCs I tried to help wanted a house built. It was in the swamp and it generated about shin deep in the water. It cost quite a few resources to build, and after I completed it, it bugged out. I got no reward, the chest remained locked, there was no option to recruit the NPC. I probably wasted a good 30 minutes on that, but that is the nature of early access games. I think most of the glaring issues are relatively easy fixes, and they definitely are onto something. The key concepts behind this game are solid. I don't want to just list off these 5 major issues that I see holding the game back without covering how they can be improved to turn Nightingale into a game that I want to sink hundreds of hours into. So the first one is the no offline mode. Again, it's not affected me, but it is affecting a lot of people trying to play this game. Inflection Games have already stated they're going to start working on an offline mode, and that should remedy remedy a lot of the negative reviews they have on Steam. Next up is the UI. Personally, it's my biggest issue with the game so far. I think a lot of people feel the same. It's clunky, it's outdated, and like I said earlier, it feels as if it's actively trying to work against you. We need a search bar and all of the other features that streamline inventory management. Third on this list is the grind of tiered items. Tiered resources are way too rare from what I've experienced so far, and I've seen others make the same complaint. Using the example I gave earlier about needing tier 1 swamp fiber, I found thousands of the available other types of fiber whilst I was looking for it. When I finally found it, there were 3 plants and they produced 8 of the tier 1 fibers I needed. Unless I got extremely unlucky, this spawn rate had to be less than 1%. It should be closer to something like 10% of all fiber produced in plants will be tier 1 swamp fiber, if that's one of the main resources you visited a particular round for. Fourth on this list is stale combat. The combat is going to take a lot longer to fix. Adding mechanics and AI to enemies is not something that can be done overnight, but it is still definitely fixable. This one will take a few months to work its way into the game if they decide to implement it. Fifth on the list is restrictive building designs. The thing that's going to keep people playing the game long after they have everything is building estates. Having everything locked to a 22.5 degree rotation in 2024 is just ridiculous. One of the best games for base building, in my opinion, is actually Elder Scrolls Online. A lot of games that involve base building can learn a lesson or two from that game. I did play with a few mods, but the level of control was second to none. You could rotate all of the structures by 1/10 of a degree. You could place a bookshelf down and then fill it with individual books and then group the whole lot together and then move them to wherever you wanted. I knew someone that had a flower garden with hundreds of individual flowers in it. My proudest build in ESO was the headquarters of a cult that I used to be a leader of, but that's a story for another day. Another improvement I would like to see is with the crafting system. Currently, if you're crafting something that needs 2 leather straps, for example, you need 2 of the same type. You can't mix 2 different leather straps, even if they're the same tier. A better way would be to allow items to be mixed if they're the same tier, slightly nerf everything if used individually, and then buff them back to the current levels if you do use all of the same type. It would allow for more creativity in terms of builds, and given the buff would still incentivize people to use one singular type of resource when crafting. So, the big question, should you buy this game? Well, it's currently priced at $30 in the US and 25 quid in the UK. It's got 10% off until the 27th of February. Let me know in the comments how much it is in your region. There is also a digital book with lore and concept art on sale in the Steam store if that's your kind of thing. At the moment, there is no other monetization in the game, but I suspect it will come in the form of outfits, pets, round cards, and possibly decor for your estate. With all the issues that I've mentioned in this video, I don't think that I can recommend this game to everyone, but that doesn't mean I'm unhappy with my purchase. If you're a big fan of the survival crafting genre, you can see the potential that this game has, and you're happy to grind through the teething problems, I say go for it. There's definitely a lot of potential in this game. I'll be making guides and covering any updates as they're announced alongside my No Man's Sky content. If you don't have the best internet, I would definitely wait until the offline mode is released. I think the majority of people might want to wait until the first or maybe second major patch. It seems that the devs are taking all the feedback on board and using that to shape the game. But you only get one first impression, and I think the game in its current state is going to put a lot of people off, especially the more casual players. I truly believe Nightingale has potential to be an incredible game, but just needs a bit more time to get there. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing so you don't miss out on my future content. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.